Welcome back to another Edgework Series preview. Today we're taking a look at the New York Islanders Carolina Hurricanes first round matchup. And if you weren't sure yet, I'm sure if you're looking at the screen right now, you can tell we've got our resident Islanders fan here, Michael Leboff, joining us to help us break this one down, as well as the guys you see every week, Monday through Friday, right here on the Edgework channel, Matt Russell and So Many Sports to help us here. But just digging into this matchup a little bit, what we might see, what we can expect. Taking a look at the season history of these two teams, the Hurricanes were 2-1-1 against the Islanders this year. And if we're looking at prices right now, we see the Hurricanes, the biggest price that we've seen so far on the board right now. Hurricanes minus 412. We see the Islanders plus 347. Leboff, there's nobody better to ask than you about this Islanders team and how they might match up head-to-head against the Hurricanes. So considering the price, considering the history this season, and what you've seen out of the Islanders as of late, what are your thoughts on this first-round matchup here?
It's horrifying for anybody to go against the Hurricanes, but I think that they should be considered the Stanley Cup favorite. But I do think that the Islanders are not going to be a simple kind of equation for them to solve. There's a couple narratives already being built. One, the last series being closer than the 4-2 scoreline looked. I think you could just throw that series out. These are two very different teams. The Hurricanes were missing Svechnikov. They didn't have Gensel. The Islanders didn't have Alex Romanov for that first 4 or 5 games in that series. Matt Barzal had just come back from a long injury, was not even close to himself. So I actually don't think that series should be even kind of looked at. You talked about the season series. 3 of those games were before Christmas, so before Patrick Roy came in, which the Islanders have just looked like a completely different team under him. Before he took over, like, they were giving up scoring chances for fun. The team just did not really look engaged. They were blowing third period lead after third period lead. It was an absolutely torturous season for the Islanders fans. It's a miracle that they are in the playoffs, honestly. If you've been watching this team night after night, you know what I'm talking about. So it's really interesting because you're looking at an Islander team that I think, if you're taking the Patrick Roy sample, which is close to half a season now, they played at a 100-point pace. The defensive numbers have improved exponentially. The teams, just like, if you watch them with the eye test, they look much more engaged and tougher to play against than they did under Lambert and in that last season under Trotz. So the Islanders have definitely, I think, unequivocally improved. Also, Semyon Varlamov stepping in goal for Sorokin, who was just absolutely gassed because they were giving up more shots than anybody in the first half, and Varlamov will start that game one. His improvement, or him stabilizing the crease a little bit, the team's improvement, it's all pointing in the right direction for the Islanders in a vacuum. But at the same time, the Hurricanes have also gotten better as the season's gone on too. And so now you're wondering, like, have the Islanders closed the gap enough to make these odds palatable? I think on a game-by-game basis, like, the Islanders will be pretty interesting to bet. I also think that they are one of the few kind of underdog teams that have a puncher's chance against this Hurricanes team. They've seen them so much. They'll be familiar with them. They know what the Hurricanes are going to try to do with, like, their throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the net and their chaotic kind of man-to-man defense. Like, there are some pencil and paper things that I think the Islanders work in the Islanders' favor here. I'm totally okay with listening to people say that the Hurricanes are going to run away and crush the Islanders in the series. Most of the numbers will tell you that that's certainly a likely outcome here. But I think that there's a chance people can overlook the improvements the Islanders have made, not just in, like, in the second half, but also, like, just the past month of the season. So but I don't know. I think it's a little bit trickier than the odds imply, but not something that I'd be more. You'd think that I'd be much more excited to bet the Islanders at this kind of price, but I'm just happy to bet with my heart here.
Right. Fair enough. Matt, we've talked this year about causing chaos. It's been one of the themes that we've brought up on the Tuesday show, whether it's been because we're getting disgusting or it's been narrowing in on these Hurricanes games. Could this be an opportunity here to flip it around and look at a price like plus 347 on the Islanders and cause some chaos in reverse?
No. I'm glad Leboff is here. It's good to see him. The old saying is, don't shoot until you see the whites of his eyes, and we haven't seen the whites of Leboff's eyes yet. So I can see why he's sort of strategically playing it that way. I'm glad that he said that, he's fine with listening to us talk about how the Hurricanes are probably going to truck the Islanders here in a pretty significant way because like that's essentially where I'm at with this. I have like the Canes winning this like 83% of the time, which sort of extrapolates out to about minus 500. So like honestly, there's probably still a little bit of value on the Hurricanes, but it's the NHL and the Stanley Cup playoffs, so I'm not going to lay 4 units just to grab one. I will play the minus 1.5 though. There's some prices out there. I think the best available price is like minus 145, something along those lines. So that's the price I'm on there. Leboff mentioned last year's series, and he also mentioned the idea like the Islanders might be interesting at some point in time to make a play on them in the game. I think that game is game 3. That was the big game last year for the Islanders at 5-1 home victory there for the Isles. He didn't mention, listen, there's a bunch of different things that he touched on with regards to the Hurricanes. And obviously for us, the metrics community or whatever, who are like, playing it by the spreadsheet, right? We always love the Hurricanes. And then we get around to the playoff time, and it's a playoff time, and they're just like, man, they're just not actually putting the puck in the net. And like, we probably should see this coming because their high danger chance conversion rate is always below league average. They just sort of survive on the fact that, for example, in this matchup, they only allow, or they should say they only allow 8 high danger chances per game, where the Islanders are going to allow 10 high danger. And that gap of 2 high danger chances is massive, right? It's essentially like getting 2 extra power plays in a game, right? Because teams convert at similar rates in both those categories. The thing is like the Canes knew it. And they're like, you know what? We're going to need to go out and get some scoring. And so they went and got Jake Gensel. And by the way, as Leboff mentions, right, they getting Svechnikov back. By the way, like, they also have guys who are just better. Seth Jarvis, right? 22 years old, went from like a 17 goal scorer to like 33 this year, right? Like, it's Sniper City now on the Hurricanes. And even though the conversion rates haven't necessarily translated, in that way, you can now at least look at this team and be like, all right, I expect them to actually convert some of the outrageously good chances that they've gotten in the past and haven't been able to convert. And moreover, what Leboff did not mention is the presence of anti-Ranta in that series last year. Now, I believe 2 wrongs don't make a right, but I am anti-Ranta. And I'm very much pro Frederik Andersen. I'm very much pro Pyotr Kochetkov, because those guys at this point, through the back end of the season, since the All-Star break, are just like dueling each other with outstanding goals saved above expectation metrics, right? So it's like, okay, it's not even about like, oh, if Anderson gets hurt, we're in big trouble. It's like, no, they have 2 guys that have to get hurt for the Hurricanes to be in theoretical big trouble, which, by the way, that big trouble was still a 6-game, series win against the Islanders last year. That admittedly, a couple of calls go a different way, et cetera, et cetera. I believe I was on the Islanders, if I'm not mistaken, in that series at a big price. So I was right there with Leboff, hoping that the Islanders could pull that off. So I just look at the Hurricanes, and as Leboff mentions, like, they are the rightful favorites to win the Stanley Cup. And by the way, just a brutal break for the Islanders to get the Hurricanes, who don't win the division this year. Right? Like, you're sitting there, Leboff, you gotta be just like, are you kidding me? The best team doesn't win the division, and now we have to go up against them instead of the Rangers, which I guarantee Leboff would have been way more into taking on the Rangers. I don't know, he doesn't have to come out from underneath that whatever that creature actually is, to tell us that. We know that's the case. So I just look at it in mind, like, man, the goaltending is outrageous. There's a reason, obviously, the expected goal share, even strength metrics, all that stuff is always outrageous. And there's reason to believe that they have, added the pieces, both sort of through organic growth, injury return, and trade to be that team. And it's just like, where is the hole in this team? So like, the Islanders had this great season. Kudos to them for making the playoffs. The Patrick Waugh stuff has all been really awesome. Like, looking forward to next year for the Islanders. But it's like, they just kind of like ran away and were, skipping down the street and came around the corner and got absolutely hit by a garbage truck, because this Hurricanes team is an absolute wagon, garbage truck, whatever, an 18-wheeler. And honestly, I don't think it's too late to bet on the Hurricanes at this point to win the Stanley Cup. It's the only future that I made before the season was a plus 500 Eastern Conference future for the Hurricanes, as far as the play, inclusive of the playoffs is concerned. It's the only thing stopped me from piling in even deeper into this Hurricanes team. Where are the holes? Just where are the holes?
Okay, so we start with, maybe we shouldn't be as harsh on the Islanders, but we get it for sure. This makes sense. Let's give them some kudos to all Hurricanes all the time there from Matt. So Money, are you going to ease the blow a little bit to Leboff here? Are you going to maybe take some pressure off? What's your thoughts on how these 2 teams match up?
So, how many times have we seen this in the playoffs? Right, you have teams that really shouldn't be there theoretically. They get in the playoffs, and there's just something about the playoffs that changes the style of game. Right, the Islanders are the epitome of that team. Right,
Mm-hmm.
um, they are able to muck it up, right? They can. And now, granted, this was not the case before Patrick Waugh.
Right.
Before Patrick Waugh, this team was terrible defensively.
The worst.
I would not have given them a chance to win one game against Carolina. They have changed. Now, it has cost them offensively because their offensive numbers have gone down since Patrick Waugh took over, but he did realize the need that we're not going to go anywhere trying to giving up these chances. So it seems like there was a conscious effort on this team that um, we are going to try to win these games 2-1, right? Whether we do it or not, whatever. That is the only way we can win these games. And now you get into the playoffs. Carolina is elite defensively, and they're also fine winning playing these 2-1 games. The problem, though, is that when you are expecting to win one goal, 2-1, 3-2 games, you're not leaving yourself much margin of error, right? And in the playoffs, how many times have we seen fluky shit happen, right? Why can't it happen right now, right? So yes, if Carolina was playing another team that wasn't as focused defensively or like wasn't as geared towards kind of slowing down the game, yeah, I would say that Carolina runs away with it. And what have we been talking about Carolina for years and years now, right? They don't have the finishing talent. They can generate tons of offense, tons of chances, but they just can't finish. That's different now, obviously, with Gensel, Svechnikov back. But what if you don't get those chances, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in the past, they've been able to generate chances and they can't score. They can't convert. Now it's possible that they don't even get those chances, right? So I'm not saying the Islanders are going to win this series. Um, I've seen strange shit happen. We know what Montreal did to Washington, right? We know what Montreal did to Pittsburgh, right? Like we've seen all these things in the past, right? Um, this kind of sets up as one of those things where you have one team that is ready to take the next step, ready to be crowned, essentially, against another team that really shouldn't be here, and the playoffs get weird, man. I think that this could be one of those weird series.
Listen, nobody loves things getting weirder more than your boy over here.
Yeah.
I think all of this sort of qualifies for me a little more in other series. I think the Washington Capitals, for example, would be the team for me that fits the like shouldn't be here profile, because honestly, the Islanders, as a playoff team last year, probably should have been here, right? And only their just horrid play for the first half of the season that got the coach fired. And obviously, it was in the Islanders to be decent, to be 100-point sort of caliber team. They just weren't, right? And as we know, having talked about like the Canucks and a potentially dominant first round series over there, like the coach having an effect, right? Like it's a thing when a new coach comes in, right? And so I think the Islanders are, should be here. The one thing that I have a problem with beyond the sort of the idea that like they're not that team that would be that fluky. The problem for me, though, obviously the problem is the matchup that they are facing, because all I ask for out of any team in any sport is like know yourself. Know what you're not doing, know what your holes are and do the best you can to fix it, because, you don't just get to start the season and have all the pieces together, or even, a 3 or 4 season run here. Right. And so if we're judging the Carolina Hurricanes by these past 2, 3 or 4 seasons, I think we're doing it wrong because of the element of some of these guys. I mentioned Jarvis, obviously, and of course Svechnikov, right? These guys are like early 20s. It's like, I'm not going to beat them, over the head with, the history of the Hurricanes, which by the way, was a conference finals last year. I'm going to sort of let them kind of be them. And if they blow it this time and, whatever time, whether that's second round, third round or the final, I don't know. But the issue I have with the Islanders is like, it's kind of a drag that it is Varlamov coming in to start the first game, because what I would want is, that Sorokin to be that guy who's having that season where you go like, oh, look out, like Sorokin could steal this thing. But like looking at the numbers, it's like Varlamov is sort of in there because Sorokin hasn't been able to kind of keep that level of play up. And so I just think there's less chance here that a goaltender steals honestly any game here. And, and I realize the idea that Carolina like wants to play, sort of a lower scoring, one goal type game. Like, I just kind of think that's how it ends up a lot of the times, right? I don't know that this is sort of by design in the same way that like maybe the Canucks sort of want to play a lower event type of game, right? It's like, to me, it's like Brind'Amour like looks at his team, goes, man, we need more scoring. We've got a couple of guys who just need a year or two of seasoning. They have that. They've gone out and they've added some of these other guys. Like, I mean, I just think this team is ready to soar. And as much, honestly, it's out of respect for the Islanders that I'm only taking a -1.5 in this series, right? That I'm willing to sort of like, quote unquote, give the Islanders or sort of, expect the Islanders to take a couple of games and still win this bet, right? Otherwise, I'm not afraid of taking a -2.5 on a team that I think is, the much better team. So like, it's out of respect for the Islanders that I'm sort of like, kind of keeping it, sort of tamping down expectations here with the Hurricanes team that, as I mentioned, I think is the best in the league.
Yep. And one thing I would push back on is I think Varlamov has been like outrageously good for the Islanders the last 10 games.
Sure.
So he's who knows what went on with Sorokin this year, because I mean, you looked at his workload and you're like, no goalie's coming out of this okay. It was just bizarre how much hard work he had to face. I actually have some faith that Varlamov could be a huge difference maker here, and that, like you said, with Kochetkov and Anderson, which I also agree with. Like, and Freddie's been ridiculous down the stretch, and so has Kochetkov. Like, if Varlamov needs a breather or isn't up to snuff, like, the Islanders have an ace in the hole in a potential all-world goalie coming off in Game 2, and he could do what he did against the Penguins when the Islanders won that series and just completely dominate it and impose his will. So I do think like you're looking at it in two ways, right? The numbers are going to tell you that Carolina is at a different level than the Islanders, but I think if So Money was kind of saying, if you take the pencil and the paper out and you kind of map this thing out and you think, okay, like the Islanders on a game to game basis can make life hell on this Hurricanes team and can cause them or force them to earn every inch, like they've been doing with teams, both good teams, they played a really good game against the Rangers, and they played a really good game against the Dallas Stars a few weeks ago, and against bad teams, like they turned the Montreal Canadiens game and it turned the Chicago Blackhawks game into a coin flip. But that's just who they are now. Like, they're just going to go out there and muck it up, as So Money said, and that's not the worst thing in the world when you're dealing in prices like this. So I don't know. I'm terrified of the Hurricanes. They're really, really good. I don't think anyone needs to make that argument. I just think that the Islanders are maybe gonna get overlooked a slightly a little bit here, and maybe if they steal Game 1 or something, or play better in Game 1 and take it, people can start to catch on to what's going on with my man Patrick Waugh.
Well, there you go. That's a little bit of a rundown there as to how these two teams might match up and kind of the series price that we're seeing. But let's dig into some of the bets that we could have for this series. And Leboff, we'll start with you on this one. If we're just taking a look at any ways to approach this, I mean, we've looked at in some of the other series previews that we're doing, we're talking about exact score for the series. We're talking about maybe one team wins a game, you bet the other team for the series after the fact, different ways to approach these. How is it that you're going to attack this one?
Yeah, I think it's just in terms of the series price, like it would be Islanders or nothing for me. I'd rather bet them Game 1 though. I think that the Game 1 price looks pretty good. And then, there's one guy in particular that I'm interested in backing, whether it's game by game, anytime goal scorer, or to even lead the series in goals, and that's Kyle Palmieri on the Islanders, who maybe, I don't know if anybody realized he just finished a 30-goal season, but he did. Yeah. He's been ridiculously good for them, and this is his kind of hockey, right? Like, he gets to the front of the net. This is the Islanders Hurricanes. It's just going to be bodies and carnage, and these guys should be not, like, I don't even know if they need to be playing with sticks, like the way that this game is going to be rugby, right? And that's his kind of hockey. So I think he's interesting. And I've seen, believe it or not, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this too, but I've seen markets pop up for most hits in a series. And with the Islanders scorekeeper, who is known to just keep his thumb on the scales when it comes to a certain fourth line, I think there's a little bit of value on Cal Clutterbuck. He was at like 8-1 to lead the series in hits. The Islanders aren't going to have the puck much here, and they're not going to have the puck much when Cal Clutterbuck is on the ice. And he wants to do one thing, so he's going to be the favorite in that market. I think it's him and Martinuk of the Hurricanes, but I think the Hurricanes will have way too much of the puck to make that an interesting bet. So if the Islanders can get 2 or 3 home games, like Clutterbuck's hit total should, I think, be well ahead of anyone else. So that's another one I'm looking at.
Fun ways to approach this for sure. So Money, you also have taken different approaches in some of these series previews that we've done. Do you have a unique one for us here in this series?
Not necessarily unique, but a little against the grain here, right? I just think that ultimately, I think Carolina wins this series because I think that in the end, they have a lit. When you talk about top end scoring talent, right? It's not as if it's not as if the Islanders have nobody, right? Like let's not think that like they can only score 1 goal a game and they have to win 1-0. The Islanders can score as well, right? And they do have guys on the top end that can convert. In the end, though, I think Carolina has a little bit more of that, and I think that this is the kind of series where I'm not opposed to Matt's Stanley Cup look or Eastern Conference look on Carolina, but in order to get there, I think that they need to go through one of these kind of series where everything that you think of yourself is put to the test, and the Islanders are going to do that to you, right? So I think that I see this as a long series, right? So I've got Carolina to win this in 7, and then I think plus 425 I see on the board there. So I will be betting that Carolina in 7.
All right, there you go, another one. And Matt, closing off the best bets portion of this series preview, is the way that you're attacking this one just the -1.5 out of respect?
Yeah, honestly, it's very rare do you take a -1.5 out of respect for the team that you think is going to lose the series, but that's honestly the case for me right now because I think this series is probably a 5-game series. A little bit interested in Svechnikov to lead the series in goals at 14-1. Obviously he's about as likely as like Seth Jarvis. He's about as likely as Sebastian Aho based on kind of a goals per game rate this season. He's obviously played less goals or played less games this season than those guys. So maybe a little bit under the radar just from a counting perspective. 19 goals in 59 games for Svechnikov, at essentially double the odds of Gensel and Jarvis. Gensel had a lot of empty net goals down the stretch there for Carolina, which he might get as well because, if they're winning games, he might rack that up. But again, double the price there for Svechnikov at 14-1. Listen, Braden, maybe the most talented player in the series on the favorite to score the most goals in the series at 14-1. It's like, I kind of have to do that.
Right. All right. Well, let's wrap it up with our final part here of the series previews. That would be our predictions. Matt, we'll go back to you to start this one off. Who's going to win this one and in how many games?
Yeah, let's call it 5 because I think the Islanders take game 3. And again, I think, hard fought, all of that stuff, right? But I think, cause chaos, storm surge, the Hurricanes are built for this. And, again, they might be tested. 7 would be wild. But, I think it's going to be tough, but they're going to show their quality in 5 games. And honestly, I think here's some more respect for the Islanders. I think they have a harder time with the Islanders than they do in the second round with whoever they play there.
So Money, you said your bet would be Canes in 7 plus 425. Are you thinking that this one is 4-3 finish, Canes in 7, or is your prediction, your gut tell you otherwise?
No, I think that I think it's gonna go 7, and I've got Carolina in 7.
All right, and Leboff, final prediction that we've got here for us. Our Islanders fan, as indicated by the what are we calling this, Matt? What's he wearing right now? The
That is
Dragon.
That's Sparky the Dragon.
it's a
Sparky the
hippopotamus.
Dragon.
No?
All
Yeah.
right.
Well, and the history of Sparky the Dragon is back when the Islanders were truly a poverty franchise. Charles Wang didn't want to splurge the money for two different mascots because he owned the Arena Football League, the New York Dragons team. So he just used the same mascot for the Islanders and the Dragons. So that's how Sparky emerged. And Sparky says Isles in 7. And I do think, Matt, if you want to add to that Carolina Hurricanes position, I think you're going to get an opportunity to bet them to win the Stanley Cup down a game in the series, and that could be another way to look at this if you're someone who thinks that the Hurricanes can win it, because Isles will win game 1.
All right. Wow. My prediction for this one, I'm gonna go with the Hurricanes 4-2. So Canes in 6. I have a feeling that we're going to see a little bit more difficulty out of Frederik Andersen just based on what I've seen out of him in playoff past. And
Leaf bias.
Come on. Tell me Freddie Andersen's not letting in a goal off of his ass from the goal line with a tie game with 2 minutes left. Tell me that he's not going to do that at some point in this series.
Tie game with 2 minutes left.
Right. I think it can happen. I think the way the Isles play this, it can happen. But I think the issue for the Isles is that it's not Freddie and nothing. It's Peter Kochetkov coming in behind him that can help him out. So I think that is something that can cause issues. But I think the Isles can cause some of their own chaos against the Hurricanes in this series. But that'll do it for this series preview. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Leboff, Somani, Matt, thank you guys for taking the time to do this. We appreciate it. For everyone else watching right now, more series previews to come for the first round here. More series previews to come for the second round. Maybe we'll get Leboff back on here for another Islanders series preview in round 2 if things really get chaotic.
Isles Caps, baby.
You can have my spot since I'll be in a ditch somewhere.
Fair enough. Well, if you enjoyed it, please hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel as well. Comment down below what your thoughts are about what will happen in this series. Maybe our best bets, maybe your best bets. Let us know in the comments. Thanks so much to everyone who tuned in. We'll see you on the next Edgework series preview, predictions, and best bets.